Welcome back to another episode of the Sacred Sisterhood podcast. And I have Amanda J.P. Brown here with me, a special guest who is a former trauma therapist. Amanda J. Brown went from high school dropout to drug user who struggled with shame, self-confidence, and loving herself to college graduate earning 2 master degrees. Her journey led her to write You Are Brave Enough, 8 daily practices to be your own hero. Today, she guides women through their shame so they can confidently stand in their power. So welcome, Amanda.
Thank you so much for having me today. I'm super excited to be here.
I am so excited as well. And I was telling Amanda in email that our story is crazy similar. So I'm really honored to have you on here and to just really
Thank
explore who you are and the incredible work you're doing in the world. So why don't you tell us about your story and how it
you.
shifted into this incredible magic that you're bringing to the planet?
Thank you. So, there was so much, right? So I didn't have a bad childhood, but when we lived in Oregon for a while growing up, and then we moved to Arizona, and things kind of got a little rocky. And eventually my parents started having issues, and there was just my connection with my dad just kind of started to fall apart. And there was just some things that happened that I don't think that he even meant to do or say, but it really kind of made me spiral a little bit out of control. There was this huge like rejection and abandonment that I perceived from my father, and really kind of just that set me off. And I was having a really hard time. We moved a lot. We had a lot of, we weren't very rich. We lived in poverty, which is not necessarily a big deal, but when you move a lot, it's really hard to make connections and fit in. And so eventually that led me kind of down to the road of experimenting with drugs and really kind of getting involved in that pretty heavily, using methamphetamines. And one day just my mom was like, look, you can't live here if you're going to continue to choose this life. I have other kids. I'm the oldest of 4. And so I made the decision to leave, drop out of school, and then I didn't really have any place to go. So I spent a couple years just wandering around, living the life that you live when you're using drugs, which means you don't always know where you're waking up. You don't always know who you're hanging out with, because you just meet somebody and then you're like best friends because you're using drugs with them, but you're really not friends. And then one day I just, life was not going the way I wanted it to go. I was feeling really disconnected. I was hanging out with some pretty shady people. And I know there was this one guy who was kind of like my father's age and older, and and reminded me a little bit of him. And he's like, you don't belong here. You don't belong here. And that was kind of one of the big things that started to set in. And so that with just being really tired of living the life that goes along, at like 18, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And so that would kind of was the catalyst of me just going, I don't want to live like this anymore. So what do I need to do? And so I called my mom, and she kind of let me back in, but I really had a hard time trusting myself. I had made so many bad decisions that I was so scared to go anywhere. I ended up getting back into high school. There was like a charter school. I'd met some guy who was actually a really good person and kind of started helping me get back on track, in life, and get back into school, get some jobs, and really start formulating that. And then I just went to school for a really long time, because that was like my therapy. Learning, being educated, going to class, having that structure really helped me feel safe. And that's like a huge thing when you're making life changes, is that sense of safety. So fast forward a little bit, That relationship ended, which was really difficult for me, with that man. And then I got into another relationship, but I wasn't really, I hadn't really healed anything. I hadn't tried to like do any of the work. I really just kind of threw myself into school as a distraction. So while it was very therapeutic and healing, it was also not dealing with all those underlying issues of abandonment and worthiness. And then I carried a lot of shame around having this life of drugs. And so I found myself not really sharing all of who I was, just sharing bits and pieces that I thought were acceptable enough to other people while hiding all of these like deep, dark, bad secrets, all the skeletons in my closet, which just made me like disconnect more from my essence and more from who I was, and really tried to continue to conform to what I thought other people wanted, which is one of the big things that happened in the second relationship where I was my first marriage. I went to, this is, probably, I don't like 5 or 7 years past getting out of drugs. And I had been working for a law firm, and they were throwing me a party, and it was the all-American girl, red, white, and blue, apple pie and ice cream. And I walked into that and I was like, holy shit. Oh wait, can I cuss on this?
Yeah,
Sorry.
absolutely.
Okay.
Cuss away.
I was like, holy shit, this is not me. This is not who I am. And the guy I was married to at the time was a military man. And I realized in that moment that I had given away so much of who I was and compromised so much of my own essence that nobody knew who I was because I didn't know. And that was like one of the big catalysts of me trying to like reconnect with myself and do the work. But I still didn't do any work. It took actually another relationship and getting married to that next person before I even started doing the work. And that's like one of the big things is the journey for everybody doesn't exactly look the same. And it's so different. And my journey actually started when I really dived into the work, when I wanted to get like more physically fit and healthier. And so, and that's where it started. And then it was like spiraled and just deepened. And I was just thirsting for that knowledge of like understanding myself and reconnecting with who I was. And through all of that, then that's what led me to write the book, You're Brave Enough, 8 Daily Practices to Be Your Own Hero, because I really realized that in order to love and accept myself for who I was and to really find my own power, I had to implement some practices to release that shame. So that's the long story short.
Wow, what an incredible story. And I actually feel like you were just reciting my own story, to be honest. It's actually really freaky. And for me, my
That's
journey of self actually going in and healing started with becoming very aware of my body and deciding
yeah.
I'm going to start to eat healthier and work out. So that's too kind of what, because that's what ends up happening is once you claim your body, then it's like,
Mhm.
okay, my mental health, my spiritual health
Absolutely.
as well, just kind of, it's like a domino effect. So, wow,
Right. Absolutely.
so much for sharing that. That's so incredible. So, we're just coming out of Scorpio full moon, which whew, that brought up so much shadow work for all of us,
Oh.
right?
Mhm.
And so, can you please riff out a little bit to us about why self forgiveness is such a huge
Mm.
part of reclaiming our power?
Yeah. Oh, I got chills when you asked that. So, yeah, when we judge ourselves and we are critical of ourselves, it's really hard to find compassion and find love. And so we really have to work on remembering like the big thing for me about forgiveness and acceptance is that we have to remember that we are not who we were, but who we were was an important piece of who we are. And so it's really about like connecting with that girl or that woman and realizing that she only had the ability to make the decisions that she did in those moments and didn't have any perspective. And when we can do that forgiveness piece and really give her the benefit of the doubt and understand that she was always doing the best that she could, that then we can really find that compassion and love and forgiveness. And when once we do that, we find more like connection and settling with ourselves. But if we're constantly judging and doing this, um like the criticism and the, you're not good enough, and we're the ones who are doing it, it's really kind of, I describe it as like almost internal domestic violence. We are continually beating ourselves over and over and over again, so we can't even move into the place where we feel like our power or our essence or our light. So it's so important to be working through this process so we can feel confident and comfortable in who we are, which that actually impacts how we feel about ourselves, impacts our relationships, the jobs that we choose, the clothes that we wear, how high we, carry our crown, and really just how we feel in our own skin. So that's absolutely, for me, one of like the fundamental things is working through all of that.
Wow, mic drop. Absolutely. A big thing for me moving through the Scorpio full moon was releasing the conditions that I was putting on the
Mm,
love I have for myself, because I realized
mhm.
that as long as I was still holding conditional love for myself, I couldn't
Yeah.
unconditionally love others.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. That is like been one of the big things that I've been working through on too, is this whole idea of like my own expectations of myself, and really the standard and the conditions, and is it mine or is it someone else's, that, or is it not even someone else's? Did I somehow perceive that this is what, to be acceptable, air quotes, is like what I need to do. But somebody might have never actually told me that. It's just that condition I put on myself, but it doesn't feel good. And so, yeah, working through and letting go of those expectations of who we are has been a real challenge, and something I've like really come aware in this last full moon as well.
Yeah, yeah, it was wild. It was kind of like a big paradigm shift for me. I'm like, oh, I didn't even know I was still doing that. Like you always go
Yes.
into deeper and deeper and
Hmm.
deeper layers of it.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I had the same experience. I'm like, what is going on? This is like crazy full moon. Like I'm not always like super impacted, or at least I don't think I am, but this last full moon, I was like, oh my gosh, it is intense, just emotionally, physically. And it's, yeah, totally get that.
Absolutely. A big thing for me this past month has been writing forgiveness letters to the old versions of myself, to the 16-year-old that moved out, to the 18-year-old that
Yeah.
was using drugs, to the 22-year-old who bought a house with a man she
Mhm.
thought she loved, like all of it, right? All of
Yeah.
these versions, because she's still part of our cellular memory.
Absolutely. And she's an important piece of who we are. Like, I really find that I have to honor that girl. I have to honor the choices that she made. And those were difficult choices. Like, she was in a position that, we could say she wasn't supposed to be in, but she was there. So who are we to judge that? She was there and she made these difficult choices, and it brought us here, which is a beautiful part of like that acceptance of the journey, which is sometimes really hard. And so for me, like one of the big processes in that forgiveness piece is honoring her and honoring her choices and honoring her journey. And then really that I find that as the more that I honor her, the less I judge her and the more I love her.
Absolutely. And she was so courageous, like
Right.
such a wild child, the courage,
Oh,
the bravery.
yeah.
Oh, she's
Mm.
definitely something
Yes.
to be
Yes.
celebrated, like,
I love that you said that. Yeah, I'm getting full body chills right now because you're right. She was courageous. She made decisions based on things that she just felt and was like courageous and brave and did things that most people never do. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. One of the things for me that I always struggled with, and I'm still sometimes coming to terms with that, is for the longest time when I was judging and hiding myself, I would be like, F people if they don't accept me for who I am. But then at the same time, I was like, I don't want to tell nobody because they might judge me. But all of that is like helped me, in therapy really accept, the clients that I was working with or the women that I coach now. Like, I find that they can tell me like my journey through all of that darkness and shame and putting myself in those places actually really, really helped me have more compassion and love and understanding for others. And I find that this is one of the things a lot of my clients tell me is like, I've never told anyone this. I can't believe I'm telling you this. I feel so comfortable that I could just share anything. And so that I think wouldn't necessarily be the same had I not been through that and understood that we all make choices, and who's to judge if they're good or not? But we make choices that put us through experiences, and those experiences can sometimes take us to really dark places. And that it doesn't make us bad people, it doesn't make us wrong. Like, our choices and who we are different. And how we respond to them is really important. And then how we view them later is even more critical sometimes. And our memories, like this evolving process. So there's a lot of research about it that the more we remember things, the more our memory changes. So then we could be remembering things that are completely different because of how we're judging ourselves.
I love that. Yes.
Mhm.
And it's quite a journey to get to a point of being able to be grateful for those really difficult experiences. As you know, it was an initiation and a lesson to really help activate the medicine that you carry for others
Mhm.
today.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like, yeah. And I had no idea that I even had medicine in me until like after I wrote my book and somebody's like, this is medicine. And I'm like, what? It is like, but you're right. It is all of those experiences that help us bring that out. It's like almost this fermenting process, right? That needs time to like work its magic.
Absolutely. So many women feel that their power is outside of them, something that they've maybe lost or given away, rather than something that's within them, always within them. They just forgot about it. Can you
Mhm.
explore that concept with us?
Yeah. So the first thing that comes to me is we have been so socialized to, and it's not even like, I don't even think it starts with like our parent. It's like beyond. We have been really socialized to have this external validation, external, like, you need to be this way or look this way. And it's just like this social construct that's so ingrained that it's even hard to know, is this something I like, or is this something I've been trained and taught to like? Is this how I really feel? Or is this how I've been socialized to feel? So it's hard because we're such, part of our biological structure, to survive is to be within our community. Like, it is like biologically wired. So this is a really interesting paradigm dynamic because we've been taught to be in community, and to be in community you have to be this way. And there's been things that say don't shine too bright, right? Or don't talk about that, you might make someone feel bad. But in that, it really dulls your shine. It really starts to make you question at a very young age. Often this is happening before we're even aware. um, so we begin to question our power, or even that something's wrong with us by little comments. So then we start to not do that. I think back sometimes about little things that happened to me growing up, and remembering that when I was like 7, 8, 9, before we moved to Arizona, there's this huge thing for me when we lived in Oregon of how like vibrant and lively and free I was. And I never felt like bad or wrong for anything I did. And then I can remember little things here and there of people making comments, like other family members about, oh, she's too, oh, like my cousin spit on me one time. And I remember that my dad flipped out, and then my mom, his mom, excuse me, said, "Oh, it's because she dresses too sexy." I was like 9 or 10. But those things start to make you like question your sexuality, question how much you put yourself out there, make you question at a young age. And so then you stop utilizing your gifts or developing them because you don't want to be harmed. So I think that's one of the things is sometimes we damper down who we are as a self-protection mechanism. And so that power can't come out if we're hiding it. It's really hard to go, this is who I am and I'm fucking proud of myself and I don't give a shit what you think, when you're so concerned that you could be harmed, and especially as women, right? We have this extra layer of safety that we have to think about, but we don't actually even think about it. It's just ingrained in who we are.
Yes, absolutely. So, a lot of the shame that we carry, like you said, is very much subconscious. So, can you illuminate some of these other stories that women may be carrying collectively that they aren't even
Mhm.
fully aware of? So, for
Yeah.
example, for me, when I first started doing this work, it was a huge paradigm shift when my coach had called me out saying, "You're carrying the story that women are less than men." I'm like,
Mhm.
"How dare you? Like, of course we're
Mhm.
equal." But then when I actually started to look in there in the layers, I was always seeking validation from my brothers, from my
Mhm.
father. My father's attention was more valid to me than my mother's attention,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm. Yeah, no, that's, oh, yeah, there's so many stories that we are carrying. That's a huge one, that we are less than men, that we're not smart. There's like that whole thing, like, I remember my nieces saying, I'm not as smart in math too. Like, we're even like not as smart. And that's, I know, not true. I think there's a lot that even comes with sexuality and shame. Like, that's a huge thing, and I don't know why I feel inclined to talk about this today, but because I don't always. Um, but I think the whole concept of like sleeping around, like for men, that it is okay if you have multiple partners. But for a woman, it makes us a whore. And how dare we like sex or want to be sexual, or, and that's a huge thing. So then there's, and that's something I've had to work on. That's probably one of my more um like deeper kind of wounds, is this whole sexuality and around really accepting like promiscuity, right? However we define that, and really releasing the judgment around that. But I do think that there is a lot of that for women, um that comes up, and that we judge or compare ourselves to men because the story's not the same. Um, let's see. The other one, so that's like the whole Madonna horror like shame, right? There's also just this piece of like being confident and being self-assured and really loving yourself. That's kind of even questionable for a lot of women. Shame around like being proud of who you are. Like, if I'm proud of myself, then what does that mean, you know?
Mhm. Absolutely. I think a big one too that a lot of women aren't aware of when it comes to the sexuality piece is we are conditioned that sex is for the pleasure of the man, not for
Mm,
the pleasure of ourselves. And so it's
yeah.
for a lot of women, their first sexual experiences when, in their first relationship or whatever, it was very much they had to put on a performance. They thought that
Mhm.
that's what it had to be like, was this porn star performance, and it never was about them until they really begin to do the work and claim their sexuality,
Mhm.
which I think is a lifelong process, really
It
claiming
is.
our sexuality, claiming our
Mhm.
pleasure, coming back into our bodies, feeling safe in our pleasure,
Mhm.
being open to receiving without feeling like we have to give something in return,
Mhm.
which is the prostitution
Yeah.
concept that we are collapsing right now, is
Yeah.
releasing, that archetype.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, this has been a huge one for me, that whole receiving, or, feeling like you have to do that. Like, for me, one of the stories is like feeling like you're in charge, like having to do all the work, or being in charge, or what does that mean? And really kind of allowing yourself to receive, that really hit for me too. And not just receiving in the bedroom, but receiving in life, right? As women, we are really working so hard to prove our worth, and we take on more and more and more and more, to the point that we're burning ourselves out. And for me, I had no idea that I was getting to, even like, I've experienced burnout as a therapist, but like in a personal life of just doing more and trying to take on more to prove that I was worthy of what I was receiving even. So that is a huge story too, that women are struggling with, that I have to do more to prove myself.
Absolutely. So, how can women begin to increase their self love with themselves today? What are your favorite
Today,
recommendations today, right now, during
today, right now.
the episode?
Well, so for me, one of the things is really just looking at yourself and going, what makes me feel good right now in this moment? What is what makes me feel good? And, one of the big things that I did a long time ago, and I've been exploring now, is like this, my closet, right? So a simple thing is going to your closet that you can do right now and touching something, not the Marie Kondo, but just going, do I love this? Does it feel good? When I put it on, does it make me feel sexy, powerful, bold, and brave? And if it's no, then get fucking rid of it. Like, don't carry stuff that makes you feel bad about yourself. Like, I've really had to work on this whole process of like putting on things that make me feel good, whether it's jewelry, whether it's color, whether it's how I cut my hair, let my hair grow out. Like, that was a huge thing. But really just say, what makes me feel good? What can I wear today that makes me feel like a badass, that makes me feel brave, makes me feel sexy? Because I think the more that we like sometimes physically start to see those things for ourselves, and we go, yeah, I love this color, it's bold and it's bright, and then it helps us move through other things. So one of the things for me is sometimes affirmations don't work, because I feel like sometimes I'm lying to myself if I don't believe it. So I know that you can like say, I'm in the process of loving myself. I'm in the process of, honoring who I am. And adding that can help. But I think for me, like really physically feeling it in my body starts with being able to feel it in my body or feel it on my body. So that's why for me, that whole piece with the um the putting on something really makes it good for me. Um, Another thing is just like doing things you love. Like, so many times we do things that out of obligation, we do things that we don't want to do, but really being able to go, what if I could pick one thing that I could do for myself, not for anybody else, but for myself today, for even 5 minutes, what would it be? And this has been such a struggle for me lately. Um, and so I have to sometimes consciously remind myself that 20 minutes for me in loving myself and doing something that shows myself that I love you is huge. And it's 20 minutes in a day. While sometimes it's really hard to do, it doesn't have to be 20 minutes, it could be 5 minutes. But or even like letting my like I don't want to say like letting myself, but sometimes we are so like, oh, I can't have that, I can't do this, I can't. We put all these restrictions on what we allow ourselves to experience, feel, do, and have until we put a condition on it, until I reach this. And that actually just makes us feel worse. So fuck the rules. Let yourself have what you desire, what makes you feel good, and do it today.
Absolutely. And just by having that act of self-love and self-reverence every day, that's going to begin to build that relationship of self-worth for yourself. Like you would a partner. Appreciating your partner
Mm-hmm.
every single day is going to deepen that connection. It's the same with yourself.
Absolutely. And it's the more that you love and honor yourself, the more you have to give to others. Because that's one of the things is like, as women, we give, give, give. We are actually praised for giving to others first. But at the end of the day, if our cup isn't filled, if we haven't given to ourselves or allowed ourselves to receive, because that's the other piece, right? We also reject when people are like, let me help you. And okay, how can I do this for you? And we're like, no, 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 I got it. I got it. And that just is like denying us. And so the more we do that, the more energy and passion and love that we have to give to others.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So what is your favorite self-worth amplification tool in your own toolkit?
I love that you say it like that. So my favorite, I have this bracelet that I just love to wear, and it makes me feel really, really great. That's one of the things. But I think one of the big things for me is amplifying my self love, is like sitting back and just going, reflecting on the amazing things about who I am. So reflecting about the good things, like being able to sit out on my patio and have coffee and reflect, or at the end of the day with a cup of tea or whatever you like to drink, and just go, today, what did I do that made me feel good? And what made me feel like myself, and really kind of loving that whole space of myself, but really that ability just to like give myself a gold star and be like, you're a badass for this, you were brave in this way, you did these things, but really just kind of like reflect and honor in that. Because if you're not saying, hey, you did a good job, not everybody's going to tell you you did a good job. Sometimes we have to tell ourselves we did the job.
I love that. And in regards to your bracelet, I have this pair of gold pants that like when I put these gold pants on, I'm like putting on my black leather boots and I'm putting on my black leather
Nice.
jacket and I got like a big blingy crystal, chunky necklace and I'm like just out like ready to rock and it's
Yeah.
so powerful.
It, that's one of the things, like, I remember it from before, but that's really since this whole Scorpio moon, I have been in my closet more playing around with how can I feel good? Where can I get inspiration? What pieces do I have that, like this, like the necklace that I'm wearing today, I have actually had this for years, but never worn it. And I saw a little outfit and I'm like, oh, I have stuff like that. And it just makes you feel good to put on certain things and go, yep, I'm sexy. And we need that. We need to feel sexy, and not for anybody else to tell us. We need to feel sexy in our own skin for ourselves.
Absolutely. I love that. So tell us about your book. Where can we buy it? And tell us whatever you want to tell us about it.
Yeah. So as I said at the beginning, it's called You're Brave Enough, 8 Daily Practices to Be Your Own Hero. You can get it on Amazon, but that's not the best place to get it. The best place to get it is ordering it through my website, amandajpbrown.com, because I handwrite a special, unique, divinely inspired message to everyone I send it to. So you can only get that if you order it from me. And I love doing that. That's one of my favorite things to be able to do, to send to people. But really the book is a process of like my own journey through my stories and my life, but also not necessarily a how to, like, you have to do it this way, but a kind of a blueprint or a way that you can do this yourself. And one of the things I have, the 8 practices in my book, these are what I really had to do to fall in love with myself and be able to even own my own story, to be able to share that I had used drugs in my life and get comfortable talking about that. I had to honor my inner child and the girl who made all those decisions. We talked about that. But I also had to be willing to be honest about my story with myself, with others. And that wasn't always comfortable. I had to be willing to find empathy for myself and really kind of that little girl. I had to be willing to explore the places that I did not want to freaking go back to because it was uncomfortable. You know, that's like the foundation for me, is being willing to explore in that exploration process through our own darkness, because that is like huge in healing. And then I had to be real. I had this whole concept of really showing up as my real, not the fake facade like mask that I put on. And you know, like wearing the clothes that make you feel confident and sexy is very different than putting on clothes that you think someone else wants you to wear. There's like a difference in how you're dressing. So really, or that fake face that when people say, "Oh, how are you doing?" You're like, "Oh, I'm good." But really inside you're like, "I'm fucking dying. Like I don't want to do this." So it's that realness is really about, you know, being real with yourself, being real with others. And then all of that is really risky, right? So being brave, daring, by taking those risks and putting yourself out there. I mean, it's risky to explore your story. You don't know what you're going to find. And it's why a lot of people don't want to do it and deflect and, you know, try to fill their day with other things so they don't have to, because that's really hard. And all of that requires open hearted ownership. So you really have to be willing to have some open heartedness, some compassion, some love, some holding that space. You really have to be able to do that. And you have to be willing to own things. You have to be willing to say, I made that choice. I did this. This is how I perceived what happened to me. I mean, obviously, we don't own if we've been a victim of someone else's abuse. That is not our responsibility. What is our responsibility is how we're continuing to allow ourselves to be affected by that. And that is a huge healing process that takes people, you know, through a very deep journey. But that process of how am I going to let this experience affect me today? And am I going to let it disempower me and keep me stuck and keep me in that victim mentality where I feel scared to be who I am? Or am I going to say, F you, I am stronger because of this experience and I am more because of what's happened to me? And so really kind of taking that ownership and owning and claiming all of who you are. So I talk about those 8 practices in the book. I have journal questions at the end of like every chapter. It is sometimes people have a hard time getting past page 36. So I tell everybody, if you get stuck, just move on. Like you don't, I think that's like the first set of questions. And I just dive right in, because if you've come to my book, you're ready to do the deep work. And I tell people all the time, the women that I work with, you're only going to go as deep as you're ready to go. You're only going to talk about and dig up and unearth and like do the work around what you're ready to. It's never going to be too much, and it's never not going to be enough. It's going to be perfect. And so if something isn't resonating, just skip it and go to the next thing. Sometimes, you know, the way through the hero practices is a personal journey. And maybe you don't start with honoring, maybe you start with ownership, or maybe you start in exploration. Sometimes you're doing everything at the same time. It is a process, and you know, you are making your own roadmap through your life, and I'm just the guide walking beside you, but you're walking your own path.
Wow, that sounds incredible. Thank you so much for birthing that into the world. Wow,
Thank
so
you.
needed. So tell us, what is your personal most favorite self-care ritual?
Self-care ritual. Yeah. So truth be told, I struggle with this. I am not always the best with this, but one of my personal favorites is really journaling and doing not even journaling, but collaging. I really find that when I can put things into pictures versus words, it can really do something different. Um, I also am really loving the deprivation tank, like the float spas right now. So, but really, one of my huge things is that journaling and the collaging, because for me, like, sometimes there aren't words to express or show how I feel, and it needs to be felt. Um, so that is a huge piece for me.
I love that idea of collaging. Pinterest making mood boards is really good for
Yeah,
that.
yeah, that's a great idea. I just did one, like a dream that I had, and I went and Googled all these images and put this whole dream together in a collage. So, yeah.
Cool. Very cool. And what brings you the most joy and pleasure right now?
Right now, most joy and pleasure. Ooh, I think, for me, right now, it's actually reconnecting with myself. Like right now, just really kind of playing in my closet, playing with how things make me feel, playing with just finding play in things instead of finding like stress. And and so that actually has been really fun and inspiring for me lately, is just being able to play in things versus like, oh my gosh, I have to do this, but putting a different spin on it.
I love that. Thank you for sharing. So, where can listeners find you and learn more about your work?
Yes. So they can find me at amandajpbrown.com. I'm also pretty active on Facebook and have a Facebook group called Band of Brave Women, where we connect a lot in there of talking about how to be more brave in your life, or questions and support. So, and that's totally free. I love connecting with my community and the women. And then hopefully soon I'll be putting some uh, I want, like, not classes, like connection, like times where I know that we're still kind of in this whole crazy COVID world. So some online community stuff. So yeah,
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Amanda, for sharing your morning with me. It's been such a delight to connect with you and get to know this incredible work that you're doing out in the world. It's been such a beautiful conversation.
thank you. Thank you for having me. And thank you for doing what you do and helping share not only my work, but your work and the other women that you've brought on to your show and helped them share their work. Because the more we come together and support each other, the greater healing that this world will have. So thank you for all you do as well.
Thank you. It's a collaborative time, right? New Earth is going to be about collaboration. So
Absolutely.
wonderful.
Absolutely.
Well, you have a great rest of your day and we'll stay in touch.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, love.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye.